All right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you back. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of controversy, a lot of cries of racism in the verdict in the Michael Dunn trial, better known as the loud music trial down in Florida. And, as was the case with the George Zimmerman case, it had nothing to do with race. Now, we had several jurors come forward out of that trial and say it had nothing to do with race. There just was no evidence. But people like Don Lemon, who pretend to be down the middle, who are disgracing themselves day after day, talking about this verdict and racism on juries and blah, 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 when they're not in the jury room. So here we have now a 21-year-old African-American juror number 8, as she was known. She actually gave her name now. And if I could find it, I will give it to you. But nonetheless, she was interviewed by CNN, and she's African-American, 21 years old, and here's what she had to say in cut number 36.
I never once thought about, oh, this was a black kid, this was a white guy, because that wasn't the case.
So people who say, here's another white guy who got away with shooting and killing a black kid, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that they really should knowledge themselves on the law.
Right. Knowledge themselves on the law. In other words, learn the law. These people, when people like Don Lemon sit there before a verdict is reached because the jury can't agree on one of the counts and they tell the judge, and he says, excuse me? That guy never should have got out of his car in the first place. You don't like the loud music? It's none of your business. And that's his mindset? God help you if you get Don Lemon on your jury. Because if that's an indication of how he will judge a case, he's not in the jury room. He hasn't heard the evidence. He just knows a black kid got killed by a white guy. And it happened in connection with the white guy complaining about loud music. So Don Lemon says, well, he should have minded his own business. What do you mean you can't convict him of first-degree murder? Huh? That's Don Lemon. He tells, but then when he's interviewed, he'll say, or on his show, he'll say, I am down the middle. I have no opinion. I'm not left. I'm not right. Yeah, okay. God help you if you ever get Don Lemon on your jury. That's all I got to say, and probably God help you. Performance over the past few weeks. Today, he laughed in the face of a Washington Times reporter who said that the Zimmerman trial had nothing to do with race. He laughed. He cut her off and laughed at her. Disgraceful. Just disgraceful. All right. Let me also let you hear this because I think it's very important. At a town hall meeting in Minnesota, Senator Amy Klobuchar and Congressman Tim Walz and Colin Peterson were asked by a constituent about Obamacare. Now, one of them, and I believe it was Peterson, said, I voted against it, so I'm going to hand it off to them. And here's how this sounded. Here's cut number 35.
Was the question about the struggling healthcare law that everyone in the audience wanted to see answered in 2 out of the 3.
What happened?
Both Klobuchar and Walz said they were aware of the problems and wanted to find ways to fix them.
So this healthcare discussion has got to be broader. It's got to point out where there's weaknesses and failures. It's got to make sure that we're not leaving people behind or distorting the system. But don't pretend there was some type of safe harbor before this where everything was just peachy keen.
Yeah, no, everything was terrible. 85% of Americans were satisfied. But again, they were dumb. They were stupid. They thought everything was peachy keen. But this congressman and the others, they know better. All right. I just wanted to get that in there. All right, folks. Yeah, I meant it. I meant it. God help you if Don Lemon's on your jury, and especially if you're white. I really believe that. I'm not saying he's a racist. I'm saying based on what he's said on the air over the past few days and week, I wouldn't want him on my jury. I'd make sure he gets kicked off. Are you kidding me? Okay, let's change gear right now and talk about a brand new study and report and more revelations on Benghazi, which are very, very important, and Hillary Clinton implicated yet again. And joining us is Scott Taylor, former Navy SEAL, president of OPSEC, OPSEC. and it's his group that has done this new report. Hey, Scott, how are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on again. I do appreciate it. Okay, so they call you. It's funny. The Reuters story reports this. Hillary Clinton faces new barrage from the right over Benghazi, and the first line is establishment Republicans and a right-wing group of former spies and special forces operatives. That's how they describe you. Anyway, tell us what the report says, what you found out.
Well, let me first say that, when we were coming out against the president for releasing national security secrets and putting our buddies' lives in danger and hindering future operations, that's, of course, what they say is, hey, these guys are right-wing crazies and all that stuff. So, we spent a little bit of time opposing that, of course, saying, hey, look, we have Obama supporters and donors in our group and all that crap. But
they don't care. Yeah.
We don't really care either, No,
I just wanted to point it out because we do a lot of media bias on this show, and I just wanted to point out how that you don't have to sell yourself to me or our audience. Yeah.
Well, you're right. There's a lot of media bias and everything like that, but I guess the biggest thing are the facts, and you have Hillary Clinton, who was in a position of responsibility all the way through this, before, during, and after. And what our group has done is taken a compilation of everything that's out there. Mostly open source, some things not open source, and compiled it to really paint a pretty damning picture of Hillary Clinton's role before, during, and after.
All right. Well, what was her role before? Was it denying the security requested by the ambassador?
That absolutely. I mean, it wasn't just one request from the ambassador. It's definitely important to say that there were literally hundreds of incidents and security reports. Now, granted, she would not have read all of those reports, but there would absolutely be a report given to her that detailed the synopsis of the horrible security situation there. But if you remember, Hillary Clinton wanted to establish a permanent spot there in Benghazi. And this was Hillary's baby. She led on Libya, and this was going to be her thing for the State Department, and that she could tout as something politically to help her run for president.
All right, so that was before. Okay, now what was her role during?
So during, she's the head of the State Department, so of course she gets the call. She made one phone call to the National Security Advisor, who then called the president, and that's the only call that we know about. That's it. That's the only. What else does anyone out there know that Hillary did the night that our sovereign soil was attacked and people get killed? She called the National Security Advisor, and that's it. No calls to the president. We don't know what she did that night. She certainly did not make a request for DOD, the only people who are really capable of getting in there into the fight. No request whatsoever there. And then, of course, you don't know what happened afterwards either. Susan Rice was on the TV saying that Hillary was distraught for those 5 days afterwards. That's why she went on the Sunday talk shows. And do we really want a president who would be distraught for 5 days after an attack? No, we want somebody who is in the fight, who's taking care of business, who's up all night long, making phone calls, making sure that our sovereign soil and our people are protected, and that's not what she did.
Right, and it's funny because if you recall, she ran a commercial when she was running in the primaries against Obama in 2008. Who would be most ready for that 3 a.m. call? And I can't wait for the Republican candidate against her, presumably, to juxtapose that commercial of hers and then put next to it her in her green outfit saying, "What difference does it make?" So I think that's
perhaps you gave the audience maybe a little bit of a preview of what we made.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, so it's interesting. I'm a little disappointed in Congressman Issa. He was on with Bill Maher a couple of weeks ago on a Friday. I guess that's when the show was done. And he sat there and talking about Benghazi. He said the purpose now is to make sure it never happens again. And Bill Maher said, well, if that's your purpose, then we're all on board. In other words, they were shocked. I was shocked that he was letting Hillary off the hook. In fact, when they specifically asked him about Hillary, he said it was Hillary's number 2 person or 3 person in the State Department. I forget the name. And when I played that for Lindsey Graham a couple of days later, he said, no. He said, Hillary's got questions to answer. She's in charge. She's responsible. So I don't know what happened to Issa.
I don't know either. I mean, that's certainly... That sounds like a Democrat talking point, and with all due respect to Chairman Issa, who I have respect for, of course you want to make sure this never happens again. No doubt about it. However, you also have to hold people accountable for their action or lack thereof. And And certainly we're not going to, like I said, do you really want somebody who's going to run for president and be a president who is completely unresponsive and unaccountable for when, our sovereign soul is attacked and our people die, and then she's distraught for 5 days and can't come on the show and answer questions, and still hasn't answered any questions. Almost 2 years later, we still have zero idea what the head of the State Department, the person in charge of that, did all night long, with the exception of one phone call.
I got one more bit of information for you. We're talking to Scott Taylor, former Navy SEAL and president of OPSEC, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. There's a report out now that former CIA Deputy Director Michael Morrell is now facing some questions from Republicans that he misled Congress about the Obama administration's role in crafting the storyline that it was a protest gone awry and the video was to blame. Among other discrepancies, he told the Senate Intelligence Committee that the talking points were sent to the White House for information. This could be problematic for him and for the CIA.
Well, we have to first say that the folks who are on the ground that are, in the shadows every single day, putting their lives on the line, looking for intelligence and executing on it, those people, there's no problems with them. It's at the highest levels of this administration, all across the administration, where you have, the politics being infused in the battlefield, and what you see here with politics and changing talking points. That's where people need to be held accountable. There's no problem with folks that are actually taking care of business. But it's unfortunate for the American people that you saw these and heard these talking points, which is a complete fabrication of what actually happened during that night.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Scott, great work. Keep up the fight, and you're always welcome here. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Scott Taylor, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very, very interesting. And it continues to build. It continues to build. And this concentrates on Hillary's role before, during, and after. She was so distraught that she couldn't make the Sunday shows, and that's why Susan Rice went on the circuit. If she was so distraught, how is she going to be president? How is she going to be president if we lose, God forbid, 10 men in an incident? What, is she going to go cry for a couple of nights? I mean, it's inconsistent. If we put forth the hypothesis that maybe Hillary was so distraught because she's a woman, oh, you can't attack a woman like that. But here that's her reason. She was distraught. I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second. Okay, when we come back, former head of the Congressional Budget Office. What is the CBO? How is it run? What does it take up? And how does it come to its conclusions? Oh, we're going to get an education right here on the Steve Malzberg Show on News.